Hello, my name is Ben Herman, and now we're going to speak about research artifacts. But frankly, I have listened to too many talks with a person in a small box on the right corner already. So,
This is much better. So first of all, let me introduce you to my brilliant co-authors, Stefan Winter and Janet Siegmund. Replicability of our research is a quality we all aim for. However, replicating previous researchers' work shows to be complicated, and the replicability crisis has reached the software engineering community, as numerous papers report. One of the responses to this crisis was the introduction of artifact evaluation to computer science conferences. It was piloted for the software engineering community in 2011 at ESEC FSE. Since then, it has spread to various other conferences and to other fields as well. In its almost 10-year history, artifact evaluation has helped to raise awareness for research artifacts and has normalized their creation and publishing. But has the process really solved our replicability problem? We were curious about that and asked whether artifact evaluation leads to better artifacts in computer science. For such an assessment, we need quality criteria to judge whether the process fulfills its objective. As a first step, we now present this study on artifact evaluation in the software engineering and programming language community. We qualitatively examined the purpose of artifact evaluation, the quality criteria and expectations for research artifacts, and the differences between the two inspected communities in those two matters. Methodology. We considered two sources of insight for our study. As a pre-study, we analyzed the ACM guideline for review and badging and calls for artifacts for software engineering and programming language conferences between 2011 and 2019. From these text sources, we extracted statements on the purpose of artifact evaluation and statements about criteria these artifacts are expected to meet. We used tools for plagiarism detection and difference visualization to aid this manual extraction. Using an online survey, we then contacted all members of artifact evaluation committees of these conferences, in total over 1,000 individuals. The goal of this survey was to determine the importance of the factors found in the pre-study and to capture expectations that go beyond them. We received 257 responses. 124 of these responses included answers to all questions. 133 responses were incomplete but provided insight for some questions. We therefore included them as well. Green circles in the diagram indicate the size of the committee, red circles indicate the amount of responses. We received responses for almost all venues and years, as you can see in the diagram.
To code the answers, we followed Hudson's approach of open card sorting. One of us identified higher order topics for each answer. This process was open, meaning there were no predetermined categories. Another person then checked these labels, and a third person was involved when differences occurred. These differences were discussed until consensus was reached. Results.
Our first research question is aimed at determining the purpose of artifact evaluation. In our analysis of calls, we found that artifact evaluation should enable the reuse of research artifacts. This view is more prevalent in calls for software engineering conferences. For programming language conferences, we found replicability of results mentioned more often. In our survey, we saw replicability mentioned more often than reusability for both communities. This, however, might be the result of a bias of survey answers towards the programming language community, as the majority of respondents self-reported to have served on a programming language artifact evaluation committee. Specifically, the replicability of results should be checked during artifact evaluation through the validation of claims and results reported in the specific paper. During our analysis of calls, we found subtle differences in the use of the terms replicability and reproducibility. We believe this is due to an inconsistent use of the terms in the research community as a whole. Very recently, in August 2020, the ACM updated the guidelines to conform better to the definitions used by the National Information Standards Organization. When compared to the previous versions, the term replicable and reproducible were swapped, leading to the current definition defining reproducibility as the repetition of the experiment by a different team using the same or original experiment setup, while replicability means the repetition of the experiment by a different team using a different experimental setup. In the foreseeable future, it is necessary to refer to the specific definition to clarify the expectations for each artifact evaluation track. Our second research question is concerned with quality expectations for research artifacts. Overall, we could not find a consensus on a quality threshold. The ACM guideline provides some criteria by giving the 4 categories of documented, consistent, complete, and exercisable. The guideline, however, leaves the exact definition deliberately open for communities and chairs to define what they mean in the particular context. We found some calls stating very specific packaging expectations, but none that specified specific thresholds. In our survey, we specifically asked for quality expectations for different artifact types. These artifact types were extracted from our analysis of calls for artifacts, where 3 types were mentioned frequently: code, data, and mechanized proofs. Where respondents expressed that for data or code artifacts, they expect proper documentation, for proof artifacts, completeness and understandability were expected. While code artifacts can be provided using a multitude of programming languages and package formats, mechanized proofs are usually formulated using one of the major proof assistants such as COG or Isabelle. This form of standardization seems to lower the burden of portability for these artifacts. As mentioned before, fostering reusability was also perceived as a major purpose of artifact evaluation. This was not on the original agenda for the process, but while inspecting calls we found that it was slowly adapted over time. This means artifact evaluation now serves a dual purpose, and we expect this to put additional strain on artifact evaluation committees. As reusability was mentioned in calls, we included several questions into our online survey on the respondents' view as artifact users. Interestingly, we found that respondents did not view replicability as a beneficial factor for reusability, even though the creation of a replicable artifact requires similar activities, such as the creation of documentation. Also, only less than half of our respondents reported experience with artifact reuse. This raises the question why this is the case, but that went beyond the scope of our study. While artifact review and artifact use share some quality expectations in our survey, criteria such as result replicability were perceived as less important here. However, quality expectations differed by artifact type for artifact use as well. Only half of the respondents were satisfied with the current process of artifact evaluation. However, the majority felt it was worth the effort. Many respondents were missing specific quality criteria and guidelines to follow when conducting an artifact review. We also found that only 66% of our respondents had experience with preparing an artifact. Additionally, the majority of reviewers only serve once, so chairs cannot rely on experienced reviewers in the process. Half of the inspected conferences feature a kicking the tires phase in the artifact evaluation process. This phase allows for closer interaction between reviewers and authors of artifacts to get things running. This phase is generally viewed as beneficial, and many reviewers expressed their wish for even more interaction with the authors. 13 participants expressed that they wished for a tighter coupling between paper acceptance and artifact evaluation. Reviewers struggle with the difference between the goal of artifact evaluation and the current decoupled process and do not feel valued in their effort.
Implications.
From our survey, we have gained a number of insights that may help improve artifact evaluations. First, we have seen that the dual goal of replicability and reusability assessment in artifact evaluations can lead to conflicting quality criteria. Therefore, we encourage artifact evaluation chairs to clearly communicate the primary goal in calls for artifacts and in instructions for committee members. We also encourage a discussion regarding unified quality standards for artifact evaluations within each community to ensure that the badges we assign roughly carry the same meaning across different conferences and years. We are now at a state where artifact availability is higher than before, and we can start to specify explicit quality expectations based on our experience. Finally, we have seen that artifact reviewers are typically recruited from younger researchers, that they mostly only serve on an artifact evaluation committee once, that they usually haven't produced or submitted an artifact themselves before, and that they have little experience with artifact reuse. Keeping this in mind, chairs should target a healthy mix of novices and experienced reviewers and should make artifact review criteria clear to the less experienced reviewers.
Our artifact.
With research artifacts as its focus, we have of course also published an artifact for our study, which we maintain as a versioned artifact on Zenodo for easy retrieval of individual snapshots, for instance before and after artifact evaluation. For easier accessibility, the most recent version of this artifact is also available as a browsable website. The artifact contains the collected calls for artifacts for the inspected conferences in original HTML and extracted text form. This can serve as a basis for further inspection. We also provide access to derived data, such as an Excel sheet listing all committee members we invited to participate in our survey. For the survey, we provide the questionnaire and the responses we received. In addition, the output of our open card sorting process is provided as a set of Excel sheets. We also provide R scripts to produce the figures from the paper and to summarize both tagged questionnaire answers and our call analysis.
Conclusion.
We encourage you all to build on top of our research. We believe our artifact can serve as a basis for the longitudinal inspection of this research process. Artifact evaluation has shown to be a valuable addition to peer review, and we should continue making it better. We would also like to thank all of our respondents, which provided us with the current expectations of the community. And, of course, thank you for listening.